They say distance makes the heart grow fonder, but in my case, it just gave my boyfriend Liam enough room to plan a whole wedding without me knowing. For 3 years, I lived for our weekend FaceTime calls, never realizing that his bad cell service at his sick mother's house was actually a cover for the high-end wedding resort where he was getting fitted for his tuxedo. I didn't find out from a friend or a text. I found out because he left his old iPad at my place, and a live location ping showed him standing at an altar 5 miles from my office. He wasn't caring for his mom. He was about to say I do to a woman who had no idea I existed. I didn't pry. I didn't scream. I just bought a ticket to his reception and prepared a slideshow that would turn his happily ever after into a viral nightmare. If you think you've been betrayed, wait until you see what I did to the man who tried to marry 2 women at once. My name is Willow, and for 3 long years I lived my life in the space between 2 time zones. Liam and I were the couple everyone envied, the ones who proved that long distance wasn't a death sentence for love. He was an architect based in Seattle, and I was a graphic designer in Chicago. We had a routine that felt unbreakable: morning texts to start the day, lunch break check-ins, and 3-hour FaceTime calls every night where we'd watch the same movies and dream about the house we were going to buy together. Liam was perfect, or at least that's the version of him he projected through my screen. He was attentive, sweet, and deeply devoted to his family. Every other weekend, he would tell me he had to drive 3 hours into the mountains to care for his mother who was struggling with a chronic heart condition. He'd tell me, "Willow, I hate that there's no signal up there, but I have to be there for her." I admired that about him. I even sent care packages to an address he gave me, which I later realized was just a P.O. box he checked once a month. I never questioned the silence. I never questioned why he always wore the same 3 shirts on our calls, or why he never invited me to meet his mother, claiming her condition made her too fragile for new company. The first crack in the porcelain was small. I was working on a high-end branding project and needed a specific font file I had saved on Liam's old iPad, which he'd left with me months ago when he upgraded. I charged it up, expecting to find my work, but as soon as the device connected to my Wi-Fi, a flurry of notifications hit the screen. One of them was a Find My alert. Liam had never logged out of his primary account. My stomach did a slow, sickening roll as I saw a blue dot pulsing on the map. It wasn't in the mountains. It was at the Grand Oak Wedding Estates, a venue famous for million-dollar ceremonies. I told myself it was a glitch. Maybe he was there for an architectural consultation. But then I saw a calendar invite pop up. Final rehearsal, 6 p.m. My hands began to shake as I pulled up the resort's Instagram. I scrolled through their weekend couples stories, and there he was, my Liam. He was laughing, holding a glass of champagne, and spinning a beautiful blonde woman in a white silk dress. The caption read, "Sophia and Liam, 24 hours until the big day." I sat in my dark living room, the glow of the iPad illuminating the tears I didn't even know were falling. I wasn't just a girlfriend. I was a secret he had managed to keep 1,000 miles away. But he forgot one thing. I'm a designer. I know how to manipulate images and tell a story that people will never forget. If you've ever felt that cold chill when you realized you've been lied to, hit the like button and subscribe to see how I started my journey to that wedding. The flight to the resort felt like it lasted a lifetime, yet it wasn't long enough to process the sheer scale of Liam's lies. As I sat in the back of an Uber driving toward the estate, I did a deep dive into Sophia. Within an hour, I had unraveled the last 2 years of Liam's parallel life. Sophia was a wealthy heiress whose family owned a massive construction firm. Liam hadn't met her at a bar. He had met her through a business pitch. To her, he wasn't a long-distance boyfriend struggling to make ends meet. He was a rising star in his firm who frequently had to travel to Chicago for weeks to manage a high-profile client. That client was me. I was his cover story to her, just as his mother was his cover story to me. He had used my insights on architecture and my design ideas to impress her father, literally building his new life on the back of my intellectual labor. When I arrived at the resort, the air was thick with the scent of expensive lilies and the sound of a string quartet. I stayed out of sight, watching from the balcony of the main hall as the ceremony took place in the garden below. I saw Liam stand at that altar, looking into Sophia's eyes with the exact same intensity he used when he told me he loved me through a phone screen. It was a masterclass in sociopathy. He didn't look nervous. He looked like a man who had successfully pulled off the heist of the century. After the ceremony, during the cocktail hour, I slipped into the reception hall. I found the tech booth where a young guy was setting up the audio-visual equipment for the night. I told him that there had been a last-minute change to the surprise wedding gift slideshow. I told him the bride wanted a more candid look at Liam's life over the last 3 years. I handed him a USB drive. On that drive was a 3-minute video I had edited during my layover. It wasn't a tribute, it was a timeline. It started with our first date 3 years ago, followed by screenshots of his "I'm with my sick mom" texts, immediately followed by time-stamped photos of him at gala events with Sophia that I had found on her Instagram. It featured our joint bank account statements where he'd been borrowing money for his mom's medical bills, which was the exact dates he'd bought Sophia's engagement ring. I didn't wait for the video to end. I stood up and walked toward the head table. The guests parted like the Red Sea, their eyes darting between me and the monster in the tuxedo. I stopped 3 feet from Liam. He looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. Sophia was shaking, looking at the screen where a photo of our signed apartment lease was currently being projected. I didn't yell. I didn't throw a drink. I simply took off the promise ring he had given me on our 2nd anniversary and dropped it into his champagne glass. I hope your mother's heart is doing better, Liam, because I think yours is about to stop beating when Sophia's father sees the fraud charges I'm filing on Monday. The fallout was immediate. Sophia didn't cry. She turned and slapped him with a force that echoed off the ballroom walls before her brothers dragged him out of the room. I learned that day that distance doesn't create lies. It only reveals the character of the person trying to bridge it. Liam wanted a life of luxury and comfort, and he tried to use 2 women to build it. He ended up with neither. I walked out of that resort, took a deep breath of the night air, and realized for the first time in 3 years, I wasn't waiting for a call. I was finally free. Revenge is a dish best served in front of 200 witnesses. Comment "freedom" if you think Willow handled it the right way, and subscribe for more stories that prove the truth always finds a way out. Thanks for watching.